Hello. A very interesting topic in weaving is the topic of the bags. In today's tutorial, I'd like to start the topic and to get to know two types of shapes of the bags with holders of similar type. So this way we at the same time touch upon the topic of the shape of the bags and the topic of a holder, possible shapes of the holders and ways of fixing them. These are the topics I'd like to work on, and today we are having the first tutorial on this topic. At first I'd like to tell you a little about the way of weaving the bags that seems rather simple to me. I take the same form I was using for weaving paper supports, several children's books. I don't have Lego connects because I have a daughter. The boy is grown up already and his Lego has been lost long ago, and I don't want to buy a new set. Though Lego would be a perfect base, but I use this kind of a form. I have fixed a few books with a painter's tape. If you turn it this way, it will be a form for paper support. If you turn it like this, it will be a form for a summer women's bag. I have woven the bottom. We've got a tutorial on weaving a square bottom. In this case we weave the rectangular one following the same principle. Then I lift the poles, twine the form round, and when we have woven up to the required height, we start working with the holders. How we work with them I will show you on the example of a round shape. Put the model aside. I'd also like to show you the bags like this. I like this shape. And I've decided to make a tutorial based on the bags of this shape. For weaving such a bag we need two workpieces like these. I have prepared one of them beforehand. Here it is not finished yet. Let's weave the second one. At first we weave a round bottom. We have a tutorial on how to weave a round bottom as well. And then I count the number of the rows to make both halves identical. When I have woven the required number of the rows, we pass on to shaping a holder. Here I'd like to show you one point, how I lengthen the tubes. At the very beginning I had 12 tubes crossed. I started weaving the rope on them. I have woven a few rows on the bunches of 3 tubes, then I have separated them by 2 as we usually do, and then I've separated each tube woven on them. When the intervals between the tubes became over 2 centimeters, I started adding the tubes after every other tube. I mean not between every 2 tubes, but between every other 2 tubes. I have distributed them and have been weaving around every separate tube. Now look, to get the neat edging here, I have to finish with the dark tubes. But here I needed the white ones to make decoupage on the white background. That is why in the process of weaving I changed the tubes. When I was adding the tubes, I added the blue ones. Now my task is to change all the white tubes. I have started it already, and now let me show you the way I do it. Maybe I have shown this technique in some tutorials already, but for me it was a discovery in my time. This very way, we insert the knitting needle, put the tube onto it, and this way it fits in much better than if we started to insert it without the help of a needle. Through 3 or 4 rows, the needle goes in better than the tube would do. Put the tube onto it and pull it through very carefully. After having woven a row or 2, we can cut the white tubes. One more time. We don't insert the tubes too deep, not to let them be seen. And this way we replace the wire tubes. So I have woven the circle up to the required diameter. I have also added the poles once again, after I've noticed that they radiate too far from each other, and I have inserted additional tubes after every other 2 tubes, making sure that the intervals between the tubes of the base do not exceed 2 centimeters. Now the next stage. In order to shape a holder like this, I cut a stripe from thin cardboard from the pack of pantyhose. I make the holder half round. I bend it in 2 and cut it this way. And also for the holder to fit the circle more or less smoothly, I make one more curve like this. I use a shape like this. Well, I have shown you the way I make it, but I have used this shape for the holder of the second half, and I'm going to continue using it. So what we do? This way I adjoin the form to the holder the form for the holder to the circle, inserting it under every other pole, sticking, lengthen the tubes, and weave in the technique many weavers are familiar with. The girls have recommended this technique, using of such little cardboard pads, and I've started using it lately instead of clothespins. And I weave further twining the form round. In the first row we try to weave a smooth the shape in the curve. Pressing tightly and continue weaving in circle. So this way we have shaped the holder. And after we have shaped the holder, weave 5 rows more in blue color. So I have woven the required shape of the half of the bag, and then I have tried 2 varieties of weaving. It has seemed to me it would be reasonable to leave the poles, to weave a little more than a semicircle, and then to put the second half on top and to weave. And it is what I have tried on my first bag. So the idea is clear. Leave the poles, weave about 12 rows, depending on the required width of the bag, and then put the second half on. But here I have faced such a problem that to fix the second half well to the first one after we have covered it, we have to weave at least a couple of rows. Here I have made them, you can see the hollow. After that I have closed the weaving and have got such a board as a result, which I don't really like. This side looks better. The bag is smooth and flat. The sharp tooth has helped a little, of course. I have decorated the board with a sharp tooth. But for the second time I have tried a different method. I have made one half, the second half, have woven the stripe between them, And then I have sewn this stripe to both halves and fixed them. I personally like this variety better. Look, it is flat from both sides. Then I decided to try making the board smaller, and I have woven one more bag, a children's one, in the same technique. Here I am still going to paint to hide these brown teeth. In the same way as I have told you, I have woven, lifted the tubes, and tried making a different type of edging. I have woven one row, made a more volumetric edging, and I thought that maybe it would be better. But honestly, I don't really like it anyway. I like this side of the bag much more, it is more pleasant to the eye. So I decided to show you the variety I like more in the tutorial. I mean two halves of the bag, the woven stripe between them and fixing them. Now pass on to completing. There is one more important point. We need the curve of the bag, if there is any, to be curved toward outside. That is why we close the rows, having turned the underside up. Here is the underside. I close the rows and complete the work in the following way. You can already take the additional holder from. In the same way as we were inserting the additional poles, I insert the knitting needle through about 4 rows, soften the tube, and insert it inside carefully. Oops! What's going on? But that's okay, it is not hard to correct. The matter is that I was just inserting these tubes in the last row, so they don't hold well. I haven't used any glue. Insert. This way we reach the end. Here I will tell you my little secret. I don't piece all the rows up to the end. Instead, I insert the knitting needle through 4 rows, and the 5th one remains intact. Why? Because when we start winding around to avoid interfering of these stabs, when we get rid of them, we can wind round easily after cutting them. In my first bag, made in this technique, the tips were interfering because I had pieced all the 5 rows. This way, grab 4 rows. Then, after I prime the article, I will cut the tubes. After we have tucked all the tubes in, the next stage is cutting the remainders of the tubes on a holder. Lately I've started using the nippers, after I saw the masters using them. I like this method and I recommend it to you as well. And to cut with no trouble here, at first I cover the holder with thick school glue, because I will have to cut very tight, and before I twine the holder with the tubes round, not to let them slide away, I cover it with thick white glue. And leave for a while to let it dry. Repeat the same actions here. And cut all the remainders of all the tubes. And while the primed holders are drying out, we have to weave the stripe we are going to connect 2 halves of the bag with. Lately I've been using very actively skewers for barbecue. At first I have bored the thin ones, and then I found the thicker ones, and I like them still better. Our good old loom. And I weave a stripe following the principle of weaving a bottom. You can either watch a tutorial or I'll remind you the way it is going on. At first, for the beginning, I leave both halves for smoothness. Afterwards I will take it out when the stripes emerge. But so far, to direct the stripe, I don't take out the second part of the loom. The stripe will be rather long. I will try it on the back. Let's weave one more row. Turn. Everything is in the same way as we were weaving the square bottom. And so on. The length of the stripe has to be from here till here. You can indent a couple of centimeters from the beginning of the holder, from both sides. So the glue we were covering the holder with has dried out. Now we can cut the poles. They will hold and start forming the holder. Cut. And from the underside insert neatly. This moment is rather complicated. Sometimes the tubes behave disobedient. In some places I use a knitting needle, in some places I just push it through. Here the knitting needle doesn't fit in, so let's do it in the old technique. And this way continue up to the end. We have made the holder partially. And our stripe is also ready. The stripe is woven. I have inserted the tips of the tubes in the usual way. I'm cutting from both sides. And now our task is to connect the stripe, which is the middle part of the bag, to the sides. How I do it? I mark the middle with some tube and start sewing from the middle.